So, it's Christmas, season of parties, presents and pantomimes. If the Nativity was ever to be acted out in a pantomime, there is one very obvious candidate for the role of pantomime villain, the one who is booed and hissed every time he comes on stage. And that would be Herod the Great, the one who sanctioned the killing of the babies in Bethlehem. He was not a nice man. His parents were Arabs, but they had converted to Judaism, and he was brought up in the Jewish faith, though he didn't have the Jewish hereditary line that he really needed to be called King of the Jews. The Jewish people didn't give him that title. That title was given to him by the Senate in Rome. He had powerful allies. He knew Julius Caesar, Mark Antony of Antony and Cleopatra fame, and Octavian, who became Caesar Augustus. And with those powerful people behind him, he didn't really need the approval of the Jews, who almost universally hated him, especially the poor and the religious leaders. The Romans gave him an army. They also gave him 2,000 German soldiers to be his personal bodyguard. He probably needed every one of them. In order to put some legitimacy to his claim to being King of the Jews, he wanted to marry a princess from Jerusalem, Princess Miriam. Problem, he was already married to Doris. No, I'm not making that up. Doris was the name of his first wife. So he divorced her and sent Doris and her son away from court. That left the ground clear for him to marry Miriam. And Miriam, although it was a marriage of convenience, was the love of his life. He adored her. He was devoted to her. He was mad about her, up until the point where his madness caused him to execute her. He thought she was trying to usurp the throne, and he loved the title King of the Jews. He was giving it to no one. And so when he became suspicious of Miriam, he first had her brother killed by drowning, then she was tried and executed by hanging. He also killed 2 of her sons, her mother and her grandfather. He was nothing if not thorough. By the end of his reign, he'd killed at least 2 of his wives and at least 3 of his children. And he was really losing the plot at that stage. When he knew he was dying, he had all the important and well-loved people of Jerusalem arrested and thrown into prison. And he left a command that when he died, these people were to be executed on the same day. He said, "No one's going to mourn for me at my death, but I'm going to make sure that there's mourning in Jerusalem when I die." You'll be pleased to know that when he died, the command was not carried out. But he killed 2 wives and 3 children in order to keep the title King of the Jews. Imagine how he felt when a camel train from the east rocked up at the palace and the wise men said, "Hey, we're here to worship the new baby who's been born King of the Jews." That wasn't going to go down well. And if he wouldn't let his wives and children take the title from him, he was certainly not going to let some baby take the title from him. We read about it in Matthew chapter 2. Herod issued a decree. He didn't really know when the baby was born. He knew where the baby was born, in Bethlehem. So in order to make sure he got the right one, he decided he'd kill every baby under the age of 2 in Bethlehem. Why is this horrible man in the story of the Nativity? Well, it's only included in Matthew's Gospel, and as we've seen previously, Matthew was trying to establish the credentials of Jesus as the Messiah to a Jewish audience. He wanted to show that Jesus had fulfilled all the messianic prophecies in the Old Testament. And in Matthew 2, we see 2 more of those prophecies being fulfilled. Rachel weeping for her children, the murder of the infants, and the flight to Egypt. When Herod ordered the killing of all the children, an angel was sent to tell Joseph in a dream, "Get up, take Mary and the baby, head for Egypt." And they fled in the middle of the night, probably not a second too soon. So that's the story of Herod and Matthew chapter 2. I'm left with a couple of thoughts. The first one is this: if Herod really believed that God was God who was almighty and could do anything, and if he thought that the prophecies were starting to be fulfilled, Did he not realise that there was nothing he could do to stop God's plan happening? And I think, what are the other prophecies that have not yet been fulfilled in the Bible? Things that are still to happen. And are we watching out for them? Are we ready for them? The building of the third temple, Israel being attacked by the king from the north, the return of Christ. These things will happen because God said they will happen. The other thing I think of is this. Herod had tried all his life to cling on to the title of King of the Jews. It's a title that wasn't passed on to his children after his death. The next person to be given the title King of the Jews was the baby that he tried to kill, Jesus. When Jesus was crucified, the Roman governor Pontius Pilate put a notice on the cross which read, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. It would be interesting to compare Herod and Jesus, both given the title King of the Jews, but they were very different kings. And that's the end of my story of Herod. I just like to finish by wishing you all a blessed and very joyful Christmas.